This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy.
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
Welcome to it. It's Tuesday. It's the Steve Gruber Show. The phone number here for you to get involved, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. You can also find out more at stevegruber.com. This part of the program brought to you by Mesa. Good health, good business, and great schools. Mesa. Still to come today, we'll have Charlotte Hayes here, the Director of Cultural Programs for the Independent Women's Forum. Cop killer tweet is New York Magazine's martyr, and is it time to consider a sell-by date on our elected officials? Do they just run out of steam? Or should we have term limits, or should we not? It's a discussion we're going to have. David Coleman will also be here. Michigan attorney and senior legal counsel for the Great Lakes Justice Center. We'll have the latest on the Planet Fitness case of Yvette Cormier against a transgender woman read man in a woman's locker room in Midland. And we'll tell you how to make sure that your lawn's in good shape before the snow flies. And it's sad to think, with nearly perfect weather for the next week, we have nearly perfect weather for the next week here. Highs in the 70s and low 80s, lows in the 40s and 50s across the entire lower peninsula, good parts of the upper peninsula. Michigan in September and October is the greatest place on earth, period. Charles Kuralt knew that. If you ever go back and look at the book Charles Kuralt wrote in about 1990 maybe, the 12 best places in America, he chose Michigan. He chose a different place for each month of the year. He chose Michigan in October. And there was a guy that was on the road a lot, and he knew Michigan's the best place. Now, over the weekend, as you know, the Republicans were gathered up north on Mackinac Island. And our newest team member, Katie Hyde, was up there, able to sit down and discuss things with some different folks. Last Friday, I had a chance to speak with Bill Schuette, among others, the Attorney General, on the air. One of the questions we didn't get to, though, was this question of untested rape kits. Katie was able to ask him that question and get some light on the subject. Here's Bill Schuette on those untested rape kits.
I think we all recall that years ago, through the help of a team effort, we discovered that there are over 10,000 sexual assault kits, rape kits. These are DNA evidence boxes that really have all the evidence of this brutal crime of rape that women in southeastern Michigan had experienced. And these rape kits were on a shelf in Detroit, collecting dust. Nothing happened. And what we did in working with the Michigan State Police, City of Detroit, and in conjunction with these legislative leaders here, is made sure that we provided money. We provided now $7 million from funds from my office that we collected from settlements and cases that we've won. We won a lot of cases, worked with the legislative leaders and appropriated this money so that we required the examination of these sexual assault kits. We've done that. We've cleaned that up. We're making progress on it. And the point now, where are we? We want to make sure that now that we've examined all these rape kits, these sexual assault kits, we're going to prosecute as many of these as we can, because what had happened is the women had been violated twice. First, by a horrific crime, and then secondly, that nobody was ever investigated, prosecuted, whatsoever. That's changing. Now we're going to provide justice for victims of rape in Southeast Michigan. That's what we're going to do, all across the state.
You know what that sounds like to me? And I kid Bill about this when I see him. And that sounds like a candidate for the state's highest office to me. That's what it sounds like. And I don't think it's any big secret, obviously. I think Bill Schuette will consider and will most likely join the race for governor come 2018. I think also seeking that position will be Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley. I don't think that's a stretch by any means. I think these two they're both qualified, clearly. They're both enthusiastic about the state of Michigan, and they're both guys that see their next step as being the next governor after Rick Snyder. My difficulty is I like them both quite well. And so maybe we can have a little discussion back and forth when we get closer to that date right here on the program. Have those two have a conversation back and forth about who is the most qualified. But I think Bill Schuette, obviously those untested rape kits, that's an extremely important matter, that they would sit there for that long. As he put it, collecting dust. And well, Justice was collecting dust, actually, in that matter. And nobody's getting to the bottom of it. Also, and we're just doing some housekeeping here because so much went on over the weekend, and so many conversations, and so many comments, and so many big issues were being addressed on the island that, you just got to make sure that you can keep up with it all. Also, Kevin Cotter, House Speaker Kevin Cotter speaking, took to the microphone to talk about a variety of issues, including where we are on budgets here in the state of Michigan.
I said jokingly this morning that 5 for 5 is no longer a promotional soundbite to sell more roast beef sandwiches at Arby's. 5 for 5 now is 5 budgets truly balanced in Michigan on time, and something that very soon will make 6 for 6. And I think if you look at all, and there are a lot of very important and serious policy changes that we address all the time, but the single largest ongoing item that has such an impact on every person in the state that we address year after year is our budget. And I'm so proud of the new expectations that we've set year after year, and we can always continue to make more and more progress on that front.
It's a nice start. It's a nice start that we've balanced 5 budgets in a row. It's a nice start. But somebody has to address the estimated $150 billion in debt the state sits in. $150 billion from bad deals. If you didn't hear me talk about Chicago earlier, Mayor Rahm Emanuel planning to raise that city's property tax by $500 million in a tax increase. That city, Cook County, has the highest sales tax in the nation at 10.25%. Now, you're shocked by that, 10.25%, but don't be shocked, because that kind of tax rate's coming your way sometime soon. Soon being a relative term, of course. Could be 5 years or 10, but relatively speaking, that's soon. Because at some point, people are not taking care of the money. People being the politicians, the feckless politicians, Republicans, Democrats, independents, all of them that we have trusted with our money for decades, have squandered the money, made special deals, done things without any way to pay it back, and squandered the resources. From Chicago to Charlotte and north to Clare. Trust me, at some point the bill comes due. And so keep an eye on it. Yeah, the budget's a nice start. $55 billion budget. We're 3 times that in debt in Michigan. And what are we doing about it? You tell me. It's 14 after on this Tuesday on the Steve Gruber Show.
Covering Michigan and the world from his bunker below the bridge. Here is Steve Gruber.
Well, here's the story that we talked about a little bit ago. Police investigating the shooting of a would-be bank robber that occurred Monday in the city of Warren. A gentleman, an older gentleman, with a concealed pistol license, who was in the bank there, and the guy came in to try to rob the bank. So, well, he took it upon himself to defend the bank, and he shot the suspect once in the left arm, once in the right arm, and once in the leg, and apparently that was enough. Anyhow, and then he got out of there. Dr. John Lott with us. You don't hear these enough because generally the news doesn't cover these stories, but here it is. The guy was arrested later. Not life-threatening injuries. But he's got 3 holes in him. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Oh, great talking to you again, Steve. Well, hopefully if enough of these types of stories get attention, it'll cause some bank robbers and others to think twice before they engage in these crimes. I mean, not only do they have to worry about the security guards there and the police, which are in uniform and they can see, but now they realize that they have to worry about the fact that customers or others who are around there may be able to defend themselves and others, and just making it riskier for them to go and commit these types of crimes.
But, in fact, we heard some people say exactly that were in the bank that said exactly maybe next time these people won't think about robbing the bank when they don't realize that some of the rest of us are armed too. And that's the message we want out there. Listen, it's not just the police. It's not just a 911 call. We're defenders of the peace as well. We being the citizens of the various and many states.
Right. Well, I was chief economist at the U.S. Sentencing Commission, and I must have read more than 1,000 trial transcripts where they'd have testimony by criminals that had turned evidence against other criminals. And, you have to be struck by how constantly these guys think about the risks of committing the crimes. And they commit crimes which they think are easier, which they think they're less likely to run into problems with, either dangers to themselves or less likely to get caught. And when you make it riskier for criminals to go and commit crimes, you reduce the number of crimes that they're going to commit.
Okay, shifting gears now. Earlier this year, Pope Francis, straying into left field a little bit, suggested that those that manufacture weapons and so forth are not right with God, basically. That owning guns and creating guns was somehow, I guess, sinful behavior. And now with the Pope coming to America, I just decided it was time to revisit this idea and I think that he's a little bit far afield here, but so be it. Here comes the Pope, who apparently thinks that gun ownership is a sin. What do you think of this?
Well, it'd be nice if we lived in a world without violence. It'd be nice if we didn't have to worry about criminals going attacking people like this robber that you just brought up in Warren, Michigan. Unfortunately, women have to worry about stalkers. People have to worry about possibly having their lives being taken from them by robbers late at night on streets or in banks. People have to worry about drug gangs going and taking over their neighborhoods. And given that that's the case, the question is, what's the alternative? Presumably the Pope thinks it's okay for people to manufacture guns for police. The question is he going to be able to stop criminals from getting guns, even if he shuts down all the gun makers in the United States? And I don't think that's the case. You look around the world, every single time that guns have been banned in a city or a country, you've seen increases in murder rates. You'd think out of randomness you'd find one or two places where murder rates went down. But, the question is, what's the alternative? If you're going to have violence, if we just can't wish it away or get all the criminals to convert to being good, solid Christians, what's the alternative for a victim who's having to face a criminal?
Yeah, if we could just get them to go to church more often, Doctor, maybe they wouldn't be criminals. Maybe that's it.
Just not going more often, but being serious, true believers, I guess.
Well, no, I understand where you're coming from, and I think that the Pope wanders more into these political discussions than any Pope I've ever been familiar with. Basically, the criticism of free enterprise, the criticism of gun ownership, I guess more specifically those that manufacture guns and so forth. And I guess you're right. If we could just make more good people instead of bad people and just wave our magic wand, that would make it all okay.
Right. Well, unfortunately, we don't live in that type of world. And surely the Pope, of all people, knows about the evilness that exists in the world and free will. And so, given that that's the case, I presume he believes that. I went to Catholic high school, and at least I understood that people have a right to protect their life and the life of, good, honest others that they may be around.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Doctor, of course, we'll have more on what the Pope has to say about this and so much more. I think he's coming to America, to Andrews Air Force Base. I believe he arrives today, so we'll have to review that when we get together next week. It's Dr. John Lott, everybody, the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. You can find out more at crimeresearch.org. Doctor, always a pleasure.
Great talking to you. All right, take care.
There you have it. And, that thing about coverage of defensive guns, it doesn't happen very often, and I think it does change the game a little bit when
absolutely. I mean, there's been a handful of times where when I was much younger I wish my mom had been armed.
Yeah, just to defend yourself. Women need it more, people in poor neighborhoods need it more. There's no question about it. 25 after on the Steve Gruber Show.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
When they kick at your front door, how you gonna come? Put your hands on your head.
33 after the hour, and welcome to it. It's the Steve Gruber Show. If you'd like to get involved with the conversation, you can do that. 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. You wonder, as I look at Mitch McConnell and John Boehner, Harry Reid, Nancy Pelosi, if there was a best used by date or sell by date, if you will, before they expire, before they go foul, that'd have been helpful to voters, now wouldn't it? Charlotte Hayes here, the director of the cultural programs at the Independent Women's Forum, to talk more about it. Charlotte, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me this morning.
And so, if we could just have an expiration date, that would have been nice several times.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I've always been adamantly against term limits. And I've always thought, if the U.S. had this in our early history, we wouldn't have had the long careers of Henry Clay and Daniel Webster or any other number of congressional greats. And I've always said we have term limits, only we call them elections. But you know what? Our political class is so entrenched and so divorced from the people outside of this country that they may really be Exhibit A for term limits. John Fund had a terrific piece in National Review over the resurgence of term limits, or the call for term limits, and he talks about the gulf between the incumbent political class and the rest of us. So I think, I'm really getting ready to consider the idea of term limits.
See, I'm not ready to go there yet because I'm still with you. I believe that term limits, it gets rid of bad people. It also gets rid of good people that are doing a good job, and therein lies the problem. And if people aren't smart enough to elect good people, then they get what they deserve.
Right.
Apparently that's true. Look at Washington.
Yeah, the question is, are we going to send home some terrible congressman and bring back his younger version? But I think that the resurgence of term limits is a reaction to the fact that we really have people in Washington who are not doing our bidding, and we seem sort of to feel trapped, And I think a lot of Republicans are really for term limits. And Jeb Bush, that's Jeb ! Did make a good point. He said that term limits, they have them in Florida, and it's brought forth a lot of new talent. And I think John Fund made the point that if it weren't for term limits, we might not have Marco Rubio. That's with an exclamation point, too, by the way. Just kidding.
That's good. I appreciate that. Marco, exclamation point.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, I suppose, you could argue that. However, again, overall, I think if you have a better chance of keeping good people, and the bad people, well, then vote them out.
We don't seem to be doing that. Actually, I think we've got some great people in Congress. It's just I think people are so frustrated because, we have this Iran treaty, and it really is a treaty that the public hates, and we don't seem to be able to do anything about it. I think one reason Republicans aren't able to do anything about it is they insist on trying to obey the law, and the White House doesn't, but it just creates this very frustrating situation. And I think we begin to think, well, if we could just get some new people in there, and maybe that's not the answer, because we got some new people in there. I guess we've got to get the bad people out and the good people in, and that's up to us.
I suppose it is, but in Michigan, where I live, we have term limits. In a lot of states, you have term limits, and people that you like, well, they have to move on to a different job. They go from the state house to the state senate to somewhere else, or not at all. Mm-hmm. So
you're not convinced. I mean, I'm not convinced yet either. But you're really not convinced about term limits.
I'm not convinced. No, and I've had it here for years, and I understand it. I get it. I understand why we were pushed in that direction, because of bad lawmakers, because people were frustrated with what they had. But the same people that are frustrated with what they had were involved with the same elections that put people there that frustrated them.
Well, in a way, as I said, I'm still not persuaded for term limits, and I agree with you in this. Having term limits is like making a rule, a new regulation, something innovative, because we aren't doing what we should do in the first place, and what our Constitution allows us to do, which is throw out the bombs.
Right, which is what we're supposed to do. We're on the line with Charlotte Hayes this morning from the Independent Women's Forum, talking about the idea of term limits, and should we get rid of them or should we not? What do you guys think? 888-900-9966. Mike is on the line with a comment about this, so let's go to this real quick and see what he has to say. Mike, welcome to the program. All right, Mike, you there? You got a comment on this one?
I do.
Go ahead real quick. Yep, go ahead real quick.
I have three comments. One, the term limits is ridiculous. I remember when legislators were serving because they wanted to serve the public before they were being paid and before they had gigantic lifetime packages of benefits for that from the union mentality. And everyone is there. That all adds on to the debt we have. Secondly, the Catholic schools used to teach consequences to evil behavior, and you had that. Right now, the last couple of years, there's been nothing about the consequences of evil, all about the mercy of Jesus, and everyone is forgiven for everything. Doesn't matter, so people run around killing people, whatever. And I used to live in Detroit on Baldwin near the Broadhead Naval Armory, in an all-black neighborhood. No crime, but everyone there knew everyone slept in bed with a pistol under their pillow.
And apparently they still do. Thanks for checking in. I got to run, Mike, but I appreciate you checking in today and got three good points in there. But I guess people are still, up in the air about term limits, Charlotte. He was also referring to the Pope coming to town and some other things we were talking about there. But I guess I remain unconvinced, and we'll have to see, because I don't think, as a result of term limits, that I'm in better shape than I was before in Michigan. Yeah, we got rid of some bums maybe, but has it improved a lot for the voters in this state? I'd say it's a wash at best.
Yeah, I'm still with you. I'm still not for term limits, but I think that the call for term limits is another way of saying, hey, you guys, you're doing not a good job.
I couldn't agree with you more. Charlotte, I greatly appreciate it. Charlotte Hayes, the Director of Cultural Programs at the Independent Women's Forum, and we're going to keep an eye on this, because basically we have this laboratory of democracy working in different places, where some places do have term limits and some don't. And the best way to figure it out, Charlotte, is to keep our eyes on what's going on.
Absolutely. The states, that's supposed to be the way it works. The states are the laboratories of democracy, and y'all are experimenting.
That's right. Charlotte Hayes, thank you so much. You have a great Tuesday. All right, there you have it. The hotline number remains open, 888-900-9966. 888-900-9966. We've had term limits for a while here. I actually read an op-ed piece that said the reason we have the problems like we have with Todd Courser and Cindy Gamrat is because of term limits, because good people get sent down the road and the pool gets thinner. And when the pool gets shallow, and no, not the DNA pool. Well, maybe. But when the pool gets shallower, you get results like Todd Courser in office, was the point they were making in that op-ed piece. Straight ahead, Seton Motley, president of Less Government, will be here. Still to come today, David Coleman with an update from the Great Lakes Justice Center on the Planet Fitness case involving a transgendered woman, Reed Man, in Midland. We'll talk about that. It's all Tuesday on the Steve Gruber Show.
The Steve Gruber Show. American values with Midwestern common sense.
Feel it, feel it.
All right, before we get to our next guest, 888-900-9966, the hotline number. Rick on the line in Burton in Genesee County. Rick on the line. Welcome to the program, Rick.
Hi, how you doing? I was just mentioning about the term limits, about human behavior. That's why I'm nervous here. Human behavior. If people have too much power and too much money and they're standing in a windfall of taxpayer money, they become corrupt and greedy. So, of course, you have a bunch of people that have been in there for 20, 30, 40, 50 years and in Congress, and it's time for them to move on. I mean, they've been saying they've been fighting the war on poverty for now 50 years, and there's guys that have been in there for so long that they kept the status quo. And so basically these guys have been sitting in there reaping the rewards of doing nothing with their feet up on the desk on a windfall of money and have power in their deal. So basically they're just greedy and greedy and corrupt.
I'm with you. And, they've got all that money to continue to perpetuate that issue. Rick, thank you for the call today. Sam in Grand Rapids. Sam, real quickly before we get to our guest, good morning.
Hello?
Yes, Sam, are you there? What are your comments?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to mention that something that you and your guests may have missed is that the bad people tend to be in the leadership positions at this point in time. They're very firmly entrenched in their positions and hard to get out of those positions. And when they're in the leadership position, they can keep doing the things that they're doing. The newer representatives it makes it difficult for them to get into leadership positions when these guys are firmly entrenched in their jobs. And political service was never meant to be a career. It was meant to be something you serve a term or two and then you go back to your job, and that's not the way it is anymore.
No, it's not. And I appreciate you checking in today, Sam. The phone number, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. I think this is part of the disconnect, actually. When you get people that are firmly entrenched there, the disconnect between Washington, D.C. and the rest of America. Our next guest is Seton Motley, the president of Less Government. And, as we widen this channel, I suppose, between the flyover states, that being people like us in Michigan and elsewhere, you wonder about all that money there in politics and between that and the average person. I mean, let's be honest. Those that serve in Congress are not like the rest of us. Those that serve in Congress have privilege and money and drivers and bodyguards, and they live a pretty fancy lifestyle, a lot of them. And so there's this huge disconnect. And so maybe that comment about term limits should be further examined. Seton Motley, welcome to the program.
Thank you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Seton Motley, the president of Less Government. Widespread government corruption, both reported and unreported. I think there's a difference between the way people in Congress live as a rule and the rest of the world that they are elected to look after. What say you?
It's amazing to me how, the American people are constantly slammed as stupid and ignorant, and there's 9 million examples of that. I mean, as Trump's support continues, for example, Donald Trump, they're idiots. Well, they seem to pick up on stuff that you don't seem to pick up on, like, for instance, the fact that you haven't enforced immigration laws in 30 years. But the fact that so much government corruption isn't reported on, and yet the average American, either just gets the sense that it's happening or understands the wallet rule. Have we discussed my wallet rule, Steve?
No, I don't think so. Explain that to me.
If you go out on a Friday night with your wallet and then you go out the following Friday night with my wallet, which Friday night are you going to have more fun? Well, you don't care what my wallet looks like at the end of the night, so of course my wallet. Well, the government's always on someone else's wallet, and the Friday night party never ends. And the American people intuitively understand this. So even when lots and lots of corruption goes unreported because the media doesn't mind, the American people know that inherently human nature dictates that there's going to be a lot of corruption at the federal level. And we get lied to all the time, and no one gets held accountable. We have scandals all the time, and no one gets held accountable. And then and the example I use as far as the next lie to be proven to be a lie out of D.C. is the Obama administration unilaterally took over the internet with net neutrality and said two big lies to as sugar to try to make the medicine go down. One of which was it won't hurt internet investment, and the other one was, and there won't be any new taxes, we promise. Well, the first half of 2015, the internet investment went down over $3.3 billion, which is like the third time ever the investment's gone down year to year. And so when people see all this, and they knew it was a lie going in on the investment, and then the government says, we're not going to tax the internet, of course everybody's grabbing their wallets because they know that's not true.
Well, absolutely. Whenever they say, hey, we're not going to tax you, here they come, right? No question.
Well, remember Obama's promise during the campaign. No one under $250,000 will pay a dime in new taxes. Well, then Obamacare came along and contains at least a dozen new taxes on people below that income threshold. So it's just, they say these things. I think, the media is so corrupt. I think there's this understanding between Democrats and the media where they just say something so that the media has a soundbite to play. Here's Obama saying there's no new taxes on the internet, or here's the chairman of the FCC saying there's no new, and then they quote them and they play them, and that way they have the quote, and then when it doesn't turn out to be true, they don't report that fact. They just played the soundbite when they lied their faces off.
Yeah, right, exactly. They just perpetuate the myth, if you will.
Well, yeah, they gladly report the lie, and then when the lie is proven to be a lie, they don't report that, and so they're on to the next lie. And anyone who saw the investment go down on the internet knows that when these same people who said that the investment wouldn't go down are also saying they won't tax the internet. And if you think the government is going to leave taxes sitting there unused, you're crazy.
Crazy. Seton Motley, always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
All right, welcome back to it. The hotline number, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. Going to the hotline now. Jakin on the line in Flint today. Jakin, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Steve. I like to listen to you every morning, and I'm with you most of the time, and sometimes I disagree with you, but I think the number one thing in this term limits that you have to recognize is we've got a real problem where people are bought and paid for. Got John Boehner, an alcoholic. There's got to be reasons. You even talked about it. I think it's into the Supreme Court. One of the things term limits will do will reduce the effects of a lot of money. Because when you got corporate America or whatever organization buys and pays for them, now they own them, and then you have them there forever, even to a point. Here was Dale Kildee, an excellent rep. But then he kind of, after 35, 40 years, he got to a point where his staff had to do all the work because he wasn't capable. I think my point.
Well, and that happens a lot. I mean, when Strom Thurmond was, 100 years old and still in the U.S. Senate? I mean, yeah, okay, so you have those things. Well, and I don't disagree with you with that, but still, people have the right to vote these folks out, Jake, and that's my point. Because what if you have something that's in there that's going into their fourth term, but fourth terms are not allowed for whatever reason, and you lose somebody good? So what's better, getting rid of the marginal people that are bad, or losing somebody that's really good and doing a fine job? That's my question.
Somebody that's really good will move through the system. They'll do a first part in one office. They'll do a second part in another office. They'll go from state to national. You'll be able to give them, and I'm really against career politicians, but you'll be able to give them, if you had a 12 and a 12, there's 24, and now they go to the Fed. You'll be able to give them more than enough time if they're good. The trouble is when they're bad, you and I both know money controls the advertisement, and when you have...
That keeps them in there. Jake and I got to run. I greatly appreciate it. Greatly appreciate listening at WFNT in Flint today. Jake and checking in. Phone number is 888-900-9966. We'll be right back.